Well, and welcome back to a Christmas time that's very, very Christmas. It's so Christmas, I have my Christmas Santa hat, and I just turned off the AC because it was 90 degrees yesterday. So while I may be having a Christmas in July, you're seeing this video in December. So let's talk about a December Christmas time classic, The Santa Claus. Alright, so I've had to think for quite a while how I'm supposed to open this one, because, what reference does the Santa Claus have anymore, if any? And that's just a general open question, to go in the comment section. Because the Santa Claus was definitely a huge thing, a good 20, 30 years ago. It was originally part of the plan until I decided not to actually tackle all three movies in one video. So next year, hey, I'll just do 2 and 3. And technically there's some reference left, as Disney has announced that Tim Allen will be back for a TV show sometime exclusively on Disney+. Which also means everybody who was like, oh, Tim Allen and Disney must be fighting because he didn't come back for Lightyear. That can't be the case. I guarantee you it's just, oh, let's get a more current star-studded celebrity cast, and also it's a guy who plays Captain America, so we can also kind of self-advertise as well. Which the Santa Claus also kind of was, There was a huge thing between Tim Allen and Disney around the 90s, and it lasted up until the early 2000s, believe it or not. The time that they worked together was really long and did extend into ABC as his most recent show, the one whose name I forget, Last Man Standing, that was it. That was ABC before it was canceled. And now again we have a Disney Plus show coming out based on the Santa Claus. So I don't got much to say about the Santa Claus, if you could tell by all the, man, let's talk about other things stuff first. So the basic setup for the Santa Claus is a divorcee dad, who is also a big-time businessman, ends up having to learn the value of fatherhood, actually get connected with his son, grow as a better person, away from the cold-hearted businessman he was, come to accept the fact that his wife has moved on and that the guy she's married now is a good guy despite what he may biasedly think of him. And at the same time also become Santa Claus. All of this is a really good premise for a film, a solid, basic one. It can work really well, You get your heartwarming moments in there. It's also a comedian celebrity, so you get the jokes in there as well. The problem with the Santa Claus is the same that it goes for any kind of celebrity vehicle, which ultimately the Santa Claus is. If you don't find the comedian celebrity, their delivery all that funny, it's not really gonna impress you all that much. For me though, Tim Allen, the reason I can't really get into him that much purely is just because of the type of humor that we have here. The type of humor that he seems to be going for is, a dry jerk kind of character. Kind of like, say, the average Bill Murray character, Blackadder, the great TV show. Many characters like that. Clark Griswold from the Vacation movies. I was thinking of him really early on when I was watching this.
I'm gonna catch you before you left your house. I ran real late today. You wouldn't believe the traffic out here. Yeah, same to you!
I was just looking at something for my wife. God rest her soul.
Oh, God, I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, she's not dead. Yeah, we're just divorced. She's history. And obviously she doesn't wear underwear. And there are plenty of shopping days left until adulthood.
And that's not very ladylike! Anyway, I'll try to get to my house as soon as I can. Oh, there's the problem right there. 3-car pileup.
And the problem is, it doesn't really venture into both either strong that I personally find funny. when it comes to the jerk aspect, it shouldn't be so far that he's awful, like, say, a Blackadder character, you know? 'Cause, Blackadder's a murderer sometimes. I don't think that would work for Santa Claus. At the same time, though, there is a bit of a semi-redemption story here, with, again, him being a cold executive. So, I get him being harsh. I get it. I just didn't particularly find the delivery of a lot of the meaner lines all that funny. They were just kind of there. And that's mostly because of the dry kind of attitude. Again, going back to, say, like a Bill Murray or a Blackadder, or sometimes even, like Chevy Chase as Clark Griswold, Tim Allen does not feel to me like he goes far enough into dry to sound dry. It kind of just sounds stale. Comedy is considered one of the most subjective things ever. Maybe only horror is considered more objective, or shit. Comedy is one of the most subjective things out there when it comes to filmmaking, personal tastes, what you do. And I think horror is the only one nearly as subjective or more subjective. And I have heard the argument that comedy may not be as subjective as you might think because of the way you can hear comedians talk about how they perfect it, how they talk about what seems to work with the most people. Something I think super is even more subjective than just regular comedy, because even then, some people just won't laugh at some types of jokes, even if they don't think they're bad, they just don't think they're funny, is delivery. For some of you saying like, oh, dry but not that dry, that sounds great. I don't really like dry deliveries all that much, even though I get the appeal. Anyone watching this and laughing their ass off because of Tim Allen's great performances, I get it. It doesn't work for me. And I think part of that is, too, just the way that the world building and the character depth just kinda really drags for a while. So, I did watch this movie a couple times as a kid. When it comes to the Santa Claus, I watched 2 a lot. I was even thinking that 15 minutes into the rewatch last night of the Santa Claus 1 of, uh-oh, I watched the second one the most. That's not a good sign for how much I might like this, but we'll keep going, we'll see. But an aspect of this, and something that happens in a lot of media where Santa is real, is none of the adults believe in Santa. I always have a very slight problem with this, in that Santa Claus being real directly means that there's proof, because, there's presents that the parents didn't buy that they're watching their kids open. It's not like a spiritual thing where you just have to trust in your instincts or whatever, and so some people will believe it and some people won't. As an adult that makes sense. With Santa Claus, it's literally, here's a fat man giving you gifts that your parents didn't buy, so why are the adults believing there's no Santa? I never really understand that totally, but I think it's a personal hang-up. So one thing I actually have to give credit for this movie is, in Charlie's mom and stepdad, they give a fairly logical reasoning of just they didn't get very specific gifts they wanted as a kid.
Boy, I really wanted a mystery date game. Do you remember those? No, of course you don't. No one does. Well, anyway, Christmas morning came and, I got dozens of presents. I got everything. Except mystery date.
I was 3. And it was an Oscar Mayer weenie whistle. Christmas came, no weenie whistle.
There was a car. And I kind of really actually do like that, because that makes a lot more sense. Santa should know above anybody else what you really want for Christmas. So if you don't get your one most asked for thing, no matter what else you might get, that I can understand in a world where Santa is real. In fact, it just makes me wonder why Santa didn't actually give them the weenie whistle and the dating board game thing. What was wrong with the last Santa? Did he fall off the roof because he was just that incompetent? Speaking of, So, I guess Santa falling off the roof is the most iconic thing in this franchise, because a few years ago in a Best Buy, you know how Best Buy, like, makes exclusive steelbooks for Blu-rays, you know, covers? For some reason, the exclusive one that they got their hands on, the iconic image was Santa dead in the snow. I don't know if that's what you want to be thinking of at Christmas time, literally dead Santa, but do what you do. What I also like about that is, at the end of the movie, all they have to do is look at Tim Allen after he's embraced and becomes Santa and has the whole look, and somehow, magically, that makes them understand he is Santa. I really liked that.
It really is you. You really are.
Scott.
Neil?
Santa?
It's okay, Neil.
The idea that just he was so finally fully Santa that just looking at him convinced you that yes, Santa's real and there he is, I like that. It also helps for the personal growth that was happening, because Scott Calvin was also learning to be a much more humbled, much better, selfless person, becoming again a real father finally. And it's stuff like that I actually did quite like. I really wish the movie was full of more of that, because that is most of my praise for the movie. Tim Allen's character, Scott, takes so friggin' long to accept that he is Santa. He goes through that whole night, magically going down chimneys, some the size of a can of Pringles, and just still can't believe he's Santa the next day. Still somehow thinking it's bullshit. I don't get that. I don't get how you can live through all that, and I can kind of get when, like, I can understand believing it's a dream, but when your son is recounting it, when he has the fucking snow globe that Bernard gave him, Scott is the last person who should think he's not Santa, and here we go. There's like another half an hour or so of just, nah, what are you talking about? I'm not Santa, I'm Scott Calvin. That didn't happen, Charlie. Stop saying I did it. I get it's a flippin' kids movie, but there should be some standards for kids' movies. Like, it's a fun, silly Christmas movie, and I've let so many Christmas things slide, but it's a complaint. It doesn't help, too, that the pacing is just so slow. It feels like I have the pacing of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but it's for an hour-and-a-half Christmas movie from Disney. Slow-paced movies are great when they're supposed to be, but not for family films like this one, and it just doesn't fit right with me. It being a fantasy kind of film, so it needs to take a little bit too much time to explain itself, that's a thing I'll always have a hang-up with, but I can't usually mark points off for it, and I'm not going to mark it off here either, because it didn't take as long as I thought, because it just kind of drops that to continue with the really slow realization of, oh, I guess I am Santa. There are moments between him and his kid that are supposed to be pretty heartwarming, but again, just nothing fully sells me other than the ending, which at least worked pretty well. There's a couple lines where I can be like, oh, okay, something's happening here, but that's as far as I felt. That I saw potential, not, wow, my heartstrings, look at them go. The comedy's just not that funny to me. I mean, you remember the iconic scene where they go to Denny's? Wow, what a laugh riot. They're out of eggnog, who could have predicted? On Christmas. There's a lot of Japanese businessmen. Is that an old racist joke? It was the 90s. It's very likely it's some weird Asian stereotype I'm not familiar with. I think it's also because, like, the restaurant down the street was closed. I think that was the reasoning, but I also don't care. And then when he goes into the back room, because he's only there because he burnt the turkey, and sees all the other dads who burnt the turkey, it wasn't, like, the worst joke or anything. It's not an offensive joke, even. It is a case of, like, oh, wow, what a 90s dad joke. Men can't cook. I wasn't super mad or anything watching the movie, for as much as, yeah, you can tell, I didn't super like the movie all that much. My biggest complaint is just, it's boring. Big chunks of the film are pretty boring. I feel like not enough is accomplished in those, and again, for what I think it's supposed to be going to, some of it I didn't feel I got enough of. Again, I said he's a cold-hearted executive. The very opening scene has that. He's at like a company conference thing, telling the same bad jokes, talking about how, aren't you glad we aren't here with our families on Christmas instead and we're working hard, hardly working? And he's lying to his car. He's lying to his car. And he's lying to his ex-wife in the car. Oh, traffic's bad. That's why I'm late. It's not because I'm a dick. Again, basic enough jokes. If Clark Griswold was doing it, would have thought it was hilarious, but just doesn't work with Tim Allen for me personally. But other than that, the mentions that he is a toy company executive is at Show and Tell, where Charlie tries to derail it by admitting that his dad is now Santa, and he's like, no, I'm a toy executive. He's getting it confused. Not because he's lying, but because at this point in the movie, he still doesn't think he's Santa. But then later, at the company meeting, where he orders all the desserts and milk, and one joke I did like because it was visual, he doesn't actually eat the salad he orders. That was pretty funny. And then what happens is, Frank Barone from Everybody Loves Raymond, Peter Boyle, oh my god, I was going to say, I'm sorry, I forgot his name, it's Peter Boyle. Frank Barone from Everybody Loves Raymond, pulls him aside and says, what are you doing? You're real fat and you're yelling all the time. Go get some help, please. And that's the last thing we see about his executive side. We don't see him quit the company. We don't see more scenes of him starting to slowly chew them out for what they're doing. We don't get but think of the kids, think of Christmas. What's the point of all this money when no one is loving Christmas and each other and family and all that nice stuff? Where's that scene? I need that scene. I love Christmas. I don't hate the commercialization as much as some, but I'm all for ripping apart the commercialization to remember that it's just a holiday where you get to spend time with your family and your loved ones. Give me more of that, instead of just fucking Home Alone style elves wrapping up a cop in tinfoil while he's like, what about donuts? It's a weird feeling of like, there are times where I was so bored and so disinterested I could imagine giving it like a 2. But then once I got to that ending, and I swear, for whatever I think about the rest of the movie, that ending is actually very nice and does actually wrap quite a few things up very well. It was a lot of what I was looking for in the movie. And I also think that some of it is just more subjective than usual. I did look at most of the jokes, aside from the ones I called out, that were actually unfunny. It's just the delivery kind of killed it for me. Some of the emotional beats were just didn't felt trying hard enough to fully get me, but some did. And it's a Christmas film. I'm willing to be a bit more lenient because I love Christmas that much. But I guess when it comes to the Disney Christmas films, currently this is the weakest one I've seen for this series. Considering the 4 that I watched the year before. Overall, the Santa Claus 1 is not a bad film. It's middling and acceptable. Which, for something you put on in the background for Christmas, is kind of what you really need sometimes, You get tired of, well, I don't get tired of, say, watching Spot's Magical Christmas or Pikachu's Winter Vacation. Those are my big 2 go-tos. But what about my other ones? Sometimes I watch Christmas Vacation. I can get tired of it, though. I watch Bad Santa. I love a lot of Christmas things, and sometimes you watch so many, and you want something else. I don't think The Santa Claus 1 will ever be back in my rotation, but I totally get why it's in a lot of people's. Is it a timeless classic? No, it really reeks of 90s. But it's trying. I don't think it tried in the right places all the time, but I think when it did try in the right places, we got something pretty good. And I remember being really fond of the second one, so the concept can work. So who knows? Maybe that TV show will turn out fine, and more than just baby boomers who want more Tim Allen-style jokes will get something out of the show. And even if it's just them, I guess they deserve something too. It's a serviceable film for the holiday season that I wish was better, but I am not going to really complain about that. Although I will say, if you really love the idea of a regular person ends up taking the mantle of Santa and all that's worth and learning how to be Santa, there are these really great, either French or Australian. I know that's a weird, those are two weird countries to confuse, but bear with me. Animated films called Santa's Apprentice, and then the sequel, The Magic Snowflake. I really, really loved those when I watched them a few years ago, and it is a little boy being roughly adopted by Santa and learning the reins, and especially the sequel even covers that too. And I just like the concept there so much. So if you do think the Santa Claus is a great idea, but like me, you're disappointed by some of the delivery or just the style of the humor, whatever, check those out if you're interested. But for what the Santa Claus is, it is its own film. It's just serviceable, if maybe a bit disappointing, only because I don't know if I expected better, but I kind of just wish it was from the premise. But not in a way that I'm going to mind, because serviceable for Christmas, maybe I'm just a bit too lax, but I can take that. I'm going to give the film a 2.5. Mediocre or fair, I guess. Anyway, happy holidays.